Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where investors with a special emphasis on couples begin, continue, and deepen their journey to financial freedom together using the powerful vehicle of real estate investing to do it. And today we have a great guest, wonderful guest, AdaPia. She is a passionate and visionary leader with extensive experience across countries, cultures, and companies. And she's co-founded businesses, launched brands, defined industries, and reinvented herself many times during her 20+ year career. She's passionate about empowerment. She is passionate about empowerment from spiritual to financial, and an international author, keynote speaker, and sought after voice in entrepreneur, capital raising, and enlightened leadership. She's the principal at Alpha Investing, which is a boutique real estate private equity firm, also a partner at Cloudfire Capital, a digital asset manager, and a venture investor and advisor. Wow. So, AdaPia, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing so well. Thanks for having me.
It's incredible to have you on. Thank you so much for making time today for us.
Of course.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. So you have a very long resume, lots of stuff that you have going on in your life right now, but we know that lives kind of move down that path of growing in complexity as we get older, right? So let's start at the beginning when things are maybe a little bit simpler. Let's talk about real estate investing and returns and passive income. Where did you get the spark for that? Or when did you first understand that that's something that you wanted?
So yeah, about the complexity, it's so true. I was reflecting on that this morning about how like it's so much easier to be a teenager, even though, you know, we don't think it is when we're teenagers. We're all angry about things, but sometimes it's like going back to those days. I mean, you know, along those lines, like I got my start in my career when I was 18, which was in a bank. So I was in the financial services industry really early on. I didn't understand real estate investing until a lot later in my career and in my life, even though I knew that real estate was a good investment. It's like one of those things that everybody knows it's a good investment, but unless you know how to get into it, and honestly, the US is the only country that I know where you can invest the way that we do. And I've lived in a lot of countries like that. And I'm from Canada originally. Like syndication and making the kinds of yields and returns that we're making here in the US it doesn't even exist, literally doesn't exist. So it wasn't until I moved to LA in 2012 and kind of got into the venture capital startup scene. And I joined one of the very first real estate crowdfunding platforms. In many ways, I helped launch that platform and the whole industry. So that was my introduction to real estate as an investment. And up until that point, I didn't know, and I didn't know anything about it at all. I owned a couple condos up in Canada, but again, because it was one of those, like, it's good to have real estate, have an apartment, make some rent. But I mean, like even the cap rates up there, like they're like one. Like it just doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
So, you know, so you come from that, or I'm coming from this perspective of like, excuse me, like how much returns did you just say? And that's legal. And that like, and it just takes a really long time to wrap your head around it. And of course, you know, 2012, this is the Jobs Act coming out like really a couple years after, let's say, the bottom of the last big downturn. So there's still a lot of uncertainty in the market. And, you know, long story short, that was the beginning. And I've been in the real estate industry largely ever since, a little bit on the fintech, but generally speaking, real estate. And that's how I got my start.
So let me ask you something, because you glossed over something really quickly. You said that in Canada, you have bought 2 condos or something, or either, my guess is that you probably moved into one and then you moved to the next one and kept the last one as a rental, or maybe you bought 2 at one time. I'm not sure. But in any event, it means that there was something there. You've got to buy real estate. Like you inherently got that.
Yeah.
Can you think of a time where you actually got that? Because some people don't even recognize that real estate is as powerful as it is. And I want to try to figure out like where that spark came from.
Well, at the time I was living in Italy, and I bought my first one because the idea was to eventually like move back and like live in it. And so the idea was I'm going to live, like we'll live in it. And then after that we'll keep it as a rental. So
Ah,
I can't actually identify the spark of it. I think it's just something that I always knew. My family, who had immigrated from Italy before I was born, on my dad's side at least, like they were landowners in his family through multiple generations. And so there's also an understanding of land value and land ownership in Europe. So, but it's more like own your own property. If you own land, like you're like really well off,
right.
right? More like land-based farming, more traditional. And so I grew up with that a little bit. So I don't have a spark of when I knew. I think it was just always part of how I was raised.
Yeah, that's really cool. I don't think we've ever had that answer before. Someone with a European background that just understands that you're just very wealthy if you own land and property. And so it was just kind of encoded into your DNA, so
Yeah,
to
I
speak,
think
right?
so.
So I think
Yeah.
that's really cool. Very nice.
Yeah. Did your family, what was, what was their kind of background, and, what did you see growing up that kind of sparked this whole entrepreneurship within you?
Oh, wow. What a great question. So my parents are from two very totally different worlds. Like my dad is from a family of nobility. So an aristocratic family that went through all the ups and downs, many downs through, the fall of Mussolini, et cetera, because they were military family, like, family tree that goes back to Charlemagne, like very
Man,
like that,
cool.
like
Yeah.
like that's my dad's
Nice.
side. And whereas my mom is what I guess people would consider in Italy would be considered a peasant, so very poor. And the entrepreneurial spark is from her because she grew up um with such adversity that what got her through was just her doggedness and her determination to be independent. And so what she instilled in me and my sisters, I have two younger sisters, is to be independent as a woman. And I think, my parents were born in the 40s. So like she grew up within that era of like wanting independence for women. And what she really instilled in us is to get that, you need to work, because how you work is how you get money. And then I sort of took that one step further around financial independence and the independence that gives me overall. But that came from her in the like working hard and like making it, especially as a woman. And then my dad is also very entrepreneurial, always like wanted to do different things. Like we had a ginseng farm at one point in Canada and like trying, because they bought some land. And so he had a different kind of an entrepreneurial spark. And my mom was just a really hard worker, that just managed to always make our family work and make sure we had everything that we needed. And so it's like a little bit of both really, but they worked really well together as well.
I think that's a great answer. And I think that a lot of people can relate with that there's one person either in the relationship that they're in or the model that they've seen, which is their parents, where there's someone that's entrepreneuring and the other person that's a little bit stable, right?
Mm.
So what I want to do is I want to now kind of pivot that to where you are right now, in the relationship that you have right now with your significant other. So how does that work out? I can tell that you're definitely an enterprising young woman right now. You have you
For
want to do
sure.
lots of great stuff. You're definitely an entrepreneur at heart.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the relationship with your significant other right now. Is this something that he's into? Or is this something that you guys both kind of like looked at and said, well, this can be your thing and this is my thing and we're apart on this? Or are you guys working together and there's their overlap?
We started really far apart and now we work together on it. But I would say it's 90% me because it's my industry to be a real estate investor, and the financial background. He does not have that. We couldn't have been more far apart in our understanding of finances and money and debt, and couldn't be more far apart on that. And so it was really me driving it. And we had to go through a lot of growth. So we've been married, we've been together since 2012, since when I moved to Los Angeles. So we basically met almost as soon as I moved here. And then, we've been together for about 9 years, and that journey of us really coming together as a true partnership, it's a big one. It's a really big one. And it's gone through, like, it's interesting because, you hear that a lot about, like, money's the thing that breaks people up. And I never really understood it because I was always so financially stable because I knew what I was doing, et cetera. But coming up against somebody who had really and it's hard to say, like, he had no idea of how it works, of nothing. And so, or even like what I would consider basic fundamentals of money and economics and nothing. And so those two worldviews collided, like they collided a lot. And so I think where we did really start to come together is when we bought a home in 2015, which actually I bought, because I was the one that had savings to do it. And so we weren't married yet. And so it was like, hey, I'm going to buy this with my money. And we lived in it together. And what he knows how to do and knew how to do is he had a background like working in construction when he was younger, and his dad's an electrician, and he's very hardworking and he's really smart. Like, he's like MacGyver. I've seen him figure things out that are just mind blowing to me. I have no idea how he figures that out, but that's just how his brain works. So I'm really grateful for. Like, we joke around and we say that, like, my ability to be like to cook and be in the kitchen and be creative and sort things out is equivalent to his on the job site. Like, he just, I don't know, he just makes it work. And so we came together around the house, and we often talk now about when we like made that decision to buy the house. He wasn't really that convinced about it because he didn't understand how money works.
Right.
But he didn't tell me that until years later, because it was, my quote unquote, my money. I was buying a house. This was a financial decision, though. We didn't want to rent anymore. We ended up basically like tearing the whole thing down and rebuilding it. Took us 5 years. And a lot of that, it was like push and pull, but it really ended up bringing us together around this final shared project that would not have been possible if he hadn't done what he does. Like, I would have had to hire a contractor, and it wouldn't have turned out to be anywhere near the incredible home that it was, which the market last year allowed us to sell at my projections 10 years ahead of schedule for what we got for it.
Incredible.
Wow, amazing. And, a lot of our listeners are probably wondering, what was that push and pull? And how did you overcome that? And what advice could you give to couples that are in your position right now?
Yeah. The push and pull is like, it's really easy. I'm a saver and he's a spender. So it's that, it's like,
I think we know that story well.
Yeah.
And I'm like a planner and a budgeter, and I had like line item for every single thing, and it was like everything. And he's not so much a planner. He's a lot quicker on his feet. I had to get used to it didn't make any sense to me, but I appreciated it at the time. Like, he would go to Home Depot and buy like a bazillion things, bring them back, and then return what he didn't use. And so at first I didn't quite understand that, because I would see this massive like debit on the bank account or the credit card. And it was just like, but it was new for both of us to basically live in and be in a construction site and all of that. We learned so much, like what we learned building a house. We didn't take that and really like do anything with it in our careers. However, with what he does, because he works in commercial construction now, what he is able to do in his work today, he says a lot of it he learned from doing it in person with us. And like, he has an MBA in architecture and all that, but it's the building piece that architects don't do. And it's the building piece that he did. But anyway, I digress a little bit from the point being like that push and pull was very much around my stress with how out of hand the budget was getting, which is not his fault. It's just how it is. And just, we couldn't really land on, how I wanted to try to be more economical about some things. And he would absolutely not be economical about anything. So in the end, it all really worked out. And we bought this new home that we're in right now. It doesn't need a lot of work. Maybe in a few years, we will undertake some bigger work, and the lessons that we learned there will be applied here around what do you do that's valuable because it adds value, and then what do you do just because you want to, and then you don't look at that budget. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I want this. It's not going to necessarily, give me a 20% return on cost, but it's something that we want. Because I also had to learn that not everything is a balance sheet. It's also experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Let's revisit the time in which you guys got married and you knew where you were, or you knew the talents that you had, but you didn't know what your spouse's talents were, or maybe you did, but you didn't know how they would necessarily materialize to something like this, right? What I want to try to do is I want to try to give the listeners something tangible for themselves, because there's listeners out there where maybe their other spouse, they don't know what their other spouse's talent is. Or maybe they do know what it is, but they don't know how it's going to apply to them. Do you have, obviously you guys found your stride when you rehabbed this house, right? And then you both ended up with incredible results, right? Like both of you guys got validation. Is there any advice that you have for in that discovery process that you guys learned about each other when you had the idea to go rehab this house, that maybe something similar some of our listeners can take away from that?
That's a really good question. It's challenging for me to answer, simply because I have this ability, I've always had it, to really see the potential in people. And so I just know where I can read people really well. And I have very deep intuition about people. And I always knew, I knew from our first kiss that he was the love of my life. He had no idea. Took him a long time. I knew immediately. I was like, wow, you are it. And I had been married once before. And so I was like, no, you're literally it. And I always understood in him, there was something about him that, even though, and maybe even his family didn't think he would ever amount to anything. He's like one of those that, too smart for the system, if that makes sense. Doesn't fit into the system, wants to go his own way because he's too smart. And I just always understood that he has just this, a great heart and a willingness to do the right thing. And that's really important. There's very few people that I've met that are so pure in intent. And so I always saw that in him, and he's very creative, so creative and so intelligent. I was like, you're extremely intelligent, but didn't apply it to, careers as the way that he would have been a great Wall Street trader. He's an insane analyst and he's amazing at math, but doesn't know anything about finances. So it doesn't meet, right. And so there was a lot there. So there was something that I always just understood. And then when we decided to, he was really excited when we got the house, because he's he's a very tangible, hands-on person. I spend my days in Excel and looking at syndications and crypto, whatever I'm doing, it's very intangible in a sense. And so he's a hands-on. So he's like, I know how to contribute. Let's knock this thing down and rebuild it, because I have all these ideas that I want to apply and do this. And so we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into either. Right? Not zero. It was just not even close to what we thought it would be. And so that was the learning experience around where I don't think he really knew what he was capable of. And even though I saw it in him, I didn't know what he was capable of until we would just show up to the job site, which was our house, and say, okay, let's do this.
And so what did those conversations look like as things were unfolding and as things were not going according to plan? How did you guys keep aligned there?
We didn't all the time. We had a lot of blowouts because we're both very, very strong-headed. And he said this to me like last year when he was doing something here at the new house, and it kind of dawned on him. And he's like, listen, he's like, because I couldn't help him at the time. There was something I couldn't do. And he said, no, it's fine. He's like, because really, like, I like doing things my way because it's the only way. I'm like, well, that explains a lot of how things went, because he knows what he wants to do. And he gets it done. It might not seem linear, but he gets it done. But we are, both very opinionated. We both are that way. And so we had to have, like, honestly, like, we fought a lot. Like, it wasn't easy. We had a lot of moments where there was a couple moments where, and it wasn't just because of the house, where I thought, man, like, I don't know if we're going to make it, because it really was a huge undertaking with all kinds of other things going on. But the way we ended up aligning, though, always is the willingness to communicate openly, like just the willingness, like once the anger subsides or whatever, like the willingness to look or listen to what the other person said, and it's a version of like what could be true about what they said, or like the willingness to say, okay, well, like, how is this true? And then the willingness to kind of come back in and come back together and say, I'm sorry for blowing up, whatever it is. And then finding a unified path forward until the next time that we butted heads. But basically that was like a rinse and repeat, like over and over and over again, until we finally figured out, took years, which is how it is, to figure out how we each communicate and what we each need at a given point in time. He needs space. He needs to be able to go do what he needs to do. And then I can be helpful. It's not my place to tell him, this is how you should do it. And I'm happy to be in that role with this construction stuff, is to say, like, I'm here to help you. What can I do to help you? As opposed to me leading. And now that's what we do on the investment side, is I'm in the lead of it. And then I ask him for his support on, like, I like to have his opinion on things. And so that's how we kind of came to that. But as you know, it's all about communication and the willingness to just like eat your own ego a lot.
Yeah. And also to your guys' credit too, I know that Sophie has a question or a comment here, but to your credit, the fact that you kept talking, because sometimes, like, when the communication, the line of communication stops, that's when like resentment starts building. And I think that in any partnership, whether it's business or marriage, or even sometimes both in this particular case, right, where there's a financial asset tied to your guys' relationship dynamics there, it's very important to keep the line of communication open, and the willingness to communicate, the willingness to work it out. Because as soon as all communication shuts down, that's a clear indication that there's no more skin in the game. There's no more skin in the game, and no one, like, one person's just not willing to even put any more energy into it. And that's the hardest part. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's so well said. And I just wanted to highlight something that you said earlier that really caught my attention, because clearly, like, you're highly intuitive, and you also have the analytical part too. So I wanted to kind of ask you, because a lot of people, especially women, I think maybe they can be intimidated by the space, perhaps the misconception that it's a male dominant space, there's all numbers, but the reality of there's a high component of intuition. Can you speak a little bit about how your intuition has led it to your success and the success of what you've built?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that reflection. Yeah, I think we're all intuitive. We just, each of us has a different level of comfort or relationship with our intuition. And it takes a while, I think, really come into our own, especially as women. Like, I wouldn't have been, it was different in my 20s, let's say. Like, I would follow my intuition for different things, but I was still trying to live according to, whatever the outside, all that kind of stuff, whatever that was, career. And then at a certain point that switches around. And I think the Great Recession made that switch for everybody in a way where it's like everything you thought worked is not working. And nothing's gone back to normal ever since. And so there comes a time when you have to be like more self-reliant. And I think with it being in the space, I'm a bit of a pioneer. I have very high risk tolerance. I'm an entrepreneur. So like that puts me in a category, as you know yourselves, like even as women, there are not that many women that have that kind of a risk tolerance. And I don't know if it's a personality thing or like a gender thing, or I'm not sure what it is, but like, I would say to the part about math, like I'm not good at math. I don't think this has anything to do with math. Like finances have nothing to do with math. I mean, they do to a point, but like, it's about the concepts. It's about understanding the strategies. And in real estate, it's about people. So like, if I'm doing a deal, or like talking to somebody or investing with somebody, like I'm reading them first, and then I'm going to look at the deal, because deals aplenty. And so it's really all about like the same kind of radar that I used with Andrew, which is like, can I trust you? Will you do right by me? Will you do the right thing? Do you have that in you to do the right thing and to be honest when things don't go well? Because that's the one thing that is to me the most important. And I do capital raising in my work, and you have to be willing to say like that. You have to be willing to say, I don't know, like these are projections. This is like, I can't guarantee this. Like there's a lot of marketing that is like, you know, big, flashy, splashy returns, and look at all these high numbers. And like, maybe it's in my company and my partners are similar, is we don't get splashy or flashy about our returns because there's no guarantee. I can't guarantee that's still going to happen. So I think the intuition part comes into play most strongly with the people part, and the trust in myself.
So good.
Yeah, very well said there. And I wanted to comment on this too, because it bothers me a lot that sometimes, you know, when we have offerings, right, at our firm, and you have offerings too because of your operating partners or, you know, whoever in your networks, right?
Mhm.
And we get compared to, or at least some of the offerings that we have, they said, well, this investment is returning 18% according to their, you know, 18% IRR, and ours is only 15 and a half or 16, right? So I'm going to be going with this guy. And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I scratch my head, and always I wish that and maybe they'll learn the hard way, but a lot of what people put there, it's just projections. And sometimes the projections, there's a person behind it. So I love what you said, that intuition serves you best, because in any situation, operators and investors are going to do the best they can. If the character is there, right? Sometimes, I mean, think of it this way, a really good operator will set the bar low and then want to outshine when the actual expectations come in, right? Like they want to set the bar low and then make things look really nice later. Or they want to say, well, I know I can hit this, so this is what I'm going to get. And then on the far end of the spectrum, you have operators that are like, we're going to hit this. And they're just like, they're gambling, right? They're basically saying, yeah, we can exit this cap just because that's what we think will happen. And then these numbers look absolutely terrific, right? Because they're making all these assumptions. And so I just wanted to highlight that. And to go back to you, right? It looks like your special sauce is intuition. And or at least that's one of them. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to see, is there any techniques or anything that you could provide to the listeners to sense out whether or not an operator is being genuine or not? Or maybe if there's any red flags that you can point out, that would be really helpful.
Oh yeah, for sure. So easy red flags are like, are they acting shady? Like, you know, like everyone knows what that means for themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
someone's acting shady where they're not transparent, and it's hard to get them to even tell you what you need. Like they try to say all these words, but they're not really saying anything. Like that to me is always a signal. Like you need to be able to explain it to me as though I don't know math. Because
Right.
it's like, I need you to explain it really, really clearly. And if there's all these weird asides and things, and I'm great at going on multiple tangents, but I'll always come back to the point. but there's a version of a person that will purposely take you on a tangent to deflect the actual question, which is usually a really important one. So a big red flag is, are they saying a lot of things that don't make sense? Are they trying to avoid telling you what you need to know? Do they get defensive, or do they try to make you feel like you should know that already? Or, like that whole like shame, there's like this weird shame thing that they do. It's like really like psychological terrorism. Do they do anything like, did you feel all, and then from an intuition, like a different perspective, do you feel uncomfortable? Do you feel like something's telling you something's not right? And that's different for everybody. Like I will feel it in my solar plexus. Sometimes I'll get a headache. I start getting really confused. Yeah, my body is like, our bodies are this massive antenna for intuition. We're just not used to listening to the body. And so the other thing too, I would say, like when we're in that situation, like take some time to walk away, like come back to it. Have a follow-up call if you need to look at the documents. And also like, for me, it's also like checking your own assumptions. Like I know what I don't know. And like, I've learned a lot from my business partner, the CEO of Alpha, Fark, who's insanely intelligent. It's insane. And he asks questions that I think, oh, well, if you're asking a question, right, then I can ask a question. And maybe this is a thing for women where we just feel like we can't, and then we're already supposed to know. And sometimes when people speak with all the words and all the jargon that they already know, and you don't know, you feel silly because you don't know, and you have to actually get over that. And I learned that from him and from Andrew. They're actually really similar that way, where even though they're highly intelligent in a very analytical way, they ask the questions to get the maximum amount of clarity so that they're not assuming anything, which then leads to false results. So it's like a mix of things, but I hope that gave like a good few different tactics.
Yeah, I love the answer. And just to underscore this, I've mentioned this on another podcast too, and Sophie's going to smile when I say this, but I honestly think that real estate investing, women are more equipped for it than men are, because it's a people-based business, right? And there's numbers, there's investing, there's negotiation and all of that, but I still think that women like have this internal system that's way more sensitive than what men. Like for men, it's trained, like you have to look for it, and sometimes you have to bank on relationships and length of time. But I think with women, like they have the ability to really supercharge and go super, super far really quick. And so that's my gut tells me, my intuition tells me that women are much better at real estate investing than men. It's just that I think that there's all these preconceived notions about women can't do it. And that's really such a shame. And one of the things, that's another reason why we're trying to do this with couples together, is to make sure that we bust through those preconceived notions.
Absolutely.
Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I know that you talked about a few tough moments and the dance of with your husband and getting on the same page. Can you talk about your common vision with Andrew and how you see where you both are 5 years, 10 years into the future from now?
I love that question. I think that we were really only able to get there after we sold the house last year. And it was a really pivotal moment in our relationship, because we were coming into quite a bit of money from the sale. And then we were looking for another home. And so this is when our two worlds really started to collide.
Oh, yeah.
Because I had a sense of, okay, all of a sudden we're going to have all this money that we need to start investing. And, because we had poured every free dollar that we had into that home. So I hadn't been investing in the syndications that my investors have been investing in. It's just how, it's how it went. And so all of a sudden we have this money, and I can apply all my theoretical, like all these things that I know how to do. And Andrew has no background in this. He knows how to be a doer of a builder, like a literal builder. And we knew we wanted to buy a home in an area that will have further appreciation. So that part was easy. Like finding the home together was easy. What was a big challenge was basically saying, now we have like multiple six figures to invest. And that clash was resolved through Excel. Essentially, like even before, when we were looking at like different, it all started when we started to think about selling the house, is that I realized that I have all the concepts, I understand things in my head and I can speak to them, but he's not hearing me because he needs to see it in numbers. And so we started a process with basically a financial model, and we would have all of our like, I was going to say like meetings, because they ended up just being like me and him and the laptop and the Excel file, and we would go over it together. And so then I realized, oh, he needs to see the numbers.
Yeah.
And then we started to understand. And then when it came to like the money, that's when he, when he said, he's like, I feel like I don't know how to help you because I don't know how to do this. And so there was a bit of like trepidation in that, which and I'm like, oh no, this is great. We're going to put it over here. We're going to do all this. And he's just like, but I can't touch it. And so we really and it came back. And so the vision really formed also as I started to, I started to deploy the capital into the syndications, and like having, everything's in Excel, everything shows the projections, everything's tracking, and he's like a genius at Excel. So once like he's so busy with work, but once he gets his hand on that file, like mine's going to look like kindergarten compared to what he can do with it. But like, he's like, oh, okay, I see, I get it. And he would like fiddle with the formulas, and then he could visibly physically see, this is what the net worth looks like. This is what the net worth throws off in passive income. This is what the asset allocation looks like. Why? And then it all started to make sense, but he couldn't just talk about it. And that's how we were able to have this joint vision now of a portfolio that will continue to grow over time, because we'll both be able to work for a long time, that will eventually give us the kind of freedom and flexibility, so that, maybe when he's done doing the project that he's currently on, he wants to start his own consulting company. And I'm not going to be sitting there in my usual way of being worried about the household balance sheet, because we've got it covered. So, it's a work in progress, but overall the vision, we're united on it because we've been able to put the work in to get the rewards. And now those rewards, I like to say, like, we have to put our money to work for us, because we're not always going to be able to work.
Yeah, right. Or you might not want to always want to work.
Correct. That's right.
That's exactly right. So first, I want to commend you and Andrew, your husband, for figuring this out. The big aha that you're like, well, I have to get him involved in a tangible way, even if it's Excel or if it's something else, where you're maybe satisfied with the concept and the idea, and then tracking the details for sure, but he wants to be like in it, like, like like right.
Touching.
And so I think the cool thing is that you guys found that out, and now this is something that you've used your business lives to improve your personal lives and your relationship together. So I just wanted to commend you there. I have a question, but I'm going to give Sophie a minute if she wants to ask another one.
Okay.
Do you?
I do.
Okay.
Overall, so this is more for our listeners. So, of course, every couple has sort of their own style. Like Derek likes to talk about, it's him, me, and then us as a unit. And for both you and your husband, can you give us a sneak peek into like what your day looks like, what your morning routine looks like, and what gets you in the zone of, just being solid and having a good day?
Oh, yeah. Well, one thing is like we both like to work. I suppose there's a level of self-expression that comes through the achievement of doing something, not like work, like slogging away, but like the achievement of something that, like, for both of us, like he's Capricorn. And so for him, like career is everything. Like he's all about it. And the more stress he's under at work, like the more problems he has to solve, and he's great at it. And so he gets up, even though it's really stressful, he gets up really like kind of excited to tackle it. And I give him a lot of support because he works in a really stressful environment. Whereas like my life's a little more chill compared, like I get my drama vicariously through his work, and I don't have to, like, I have no drama. I love it. And so, so we have this where, his career is very important to him. That's so important to him. And I've been able to create a career for myself that is vastly different. But it allows me to support him in the way that he needs. And that support means letting him have that career. And I'm essentially the CFO and the CIO of our household. And that's fine because I run it like it's our own family office, and it's small right now, but the whole point is you got to put yourself there and then, go there. So, we don't have kids. We have 2 French bulldogs. So like almost kids. And, like really like the day he works from home, sometimes he's on construction site a few times a week. And so I think what gets us, really like focused and motivated is that at this point in time, like we hit a stride, or we hit a place when we sold and bought here where our life is different, and we have a different focus, and we have different goals. And mine's a lot clearer now because most of my goal is on that and on alpha and on like building the business, and we're getting to a really great place there. And so it's like a harvesting, like we're coming into like harvest season. And so that feels really good. It feels like all that hard work that we put in for so many years is coming to fruition. But harvesting is an art in and of itself. Plus the macroeconomic environment, plus everything that's going on. And so I get my juice from having multiple things going on and like creating streams of passive income and like advising my startups and like, all the Bitcoin, all my stuff that jazzes me up. Andrew's like one lane. He's like, I am building this building. I am doing this work, like one lane only. And that's fine because we also give each other a ton of space to do exactly that. And so I think that it's just like this ecosystem that we've created where we derive so much personal satisfaction from the work that we're doing. And we know that we're building something together, because I forgot to say, as part of like that big vision, I promised Andrew that in a few years, when he's off this really big project that he's on, that we'll buy some things for him to actively manage, but for now, he doesn't have the time. So I promise, I'm like, we'll exit the syndications when it's time. We'll go to cash, then we'll buy something. Then you can have at her. I am not an active investor. All yours. Have fun. But right now I'm having the fun doing the passive. So, it all comes back around. It's like a flexible, it's really flexible and fluid, but it's also really solid, because I think we've really become solid in our relationship.
Excellent.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pivot here because I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time touching on what you do actively, because I know that we spent a lot of time talking about relationships and business and perspective, and I think that's important. But I also want everyone to know also all of the hats that you're juggling right now. And I wanted to talk to you about, just briefly, about how you're able to balance all these things out, because it sounds like you have 2 ventures going on. You're a digital asset manager, you've got Bitcoin. So give us a little bit of a sneak peek into your life there, if you can.
Yeah. It's like, I had to admit to myself that I really like having multiple things going on. If I have only one thing, I'm really bad at it because it doesn't excite me as much as having multiple things. It's just my personality. And when I accepted it, then everything became a lot easier. Primarily like 80% of my focus, if you will, like even more than 80, is with alpha. It's with the firm. We're doing our syndications. We're raising capital for multifamily, senior housing, single family rental portfolios. We have a few asset classes that we invest in. And so that's been a really huge focus for the past few years, growing this firm. And so that is like most of my time. My role there is on the capital raising side. I'm very like face forward. So part of that role is me being out there and like and talking to people. So I'm a little bit of that rainmaker kind of a person. And so I have to spend a lot of time in the networking and so that brings me into the sphere of so many other really interesting people, like in other investors, other things. And so that brings me all these other opportunities to become a GP, to become an LP, I love, when I have the bandwidth and the capacity to maybe take on some startup advisory roles or board roles, because that's my way of giving back. And I think it's really important as an investor. Like there's a lot, I think it's very meaningful. That's for me, investing is very meaningful. And especially investing in others. It's like my way of giving them something. And they're the ones out there doing the work to do whatever world changing thing it is, or industry changing, whatever, and I find it's very important, even in real estate as an investor, like who we invest with, the living conditions that like fixing neighborhoods, like whatever it is, however you want to put it, senior living, like taking a distressed property and bringing it up to correct operating and treating people right, especially. So I think that gets lost a little bit in the money talk, like, oh, money. And then it's like, no, it's not money. There's actually so much value. Thank you. It's like so much. And so I get easily excited about a lot of things. And so, I have these smaller roles where I get to stay on. It also keeps me really relevant and on top of things because there's so much moving so fast. And so I can't just read about it. I have to be part of it, to my detriment or not. So that's why I'm involved in like so many other like little things, but primarily like it's in the real estate. The bulk of my portfolio is real estate. I do believe it's really important for us to understand what's going on in equities markets, to like, crypto. I know a lot of real estate investors understand it inherently, especially Bitcoin. So they're getting into it for good reason. And so everything intersects because of my background in fintech. I know how, just even in the financial system, how technology has come into to finances. And so to me, like crypto and all of that is just an extension. And so I don't want to be the last to know. So I'm always like getting involved. So it's a mixture of just my personal interest and wanting to be involved in also other people's businesses that are doing really incredible work, because sometimes the only way I can do it is as an investor or an advisor with a couple hours a week. I would love to be able to run every amazing company and grow every amazing company, but I can't. I have my solid company where I am. And then I give what I can of my time to others.
Excellent. Very cool. Well, yeah, I can definitely relate with that. And it totally makes sense because there's people in the entrepreneurial world that are looking for capital and looking for returns and stable investments. And so we run across all types of people in the real estate industry, a lot of people that know what they're doing, some are just getting started. And so it's really cool to hear all those perspectives. And that's another reason why it's so cool to be in the people business with real estate, at least before things get tokenized and then everything's all like, then real estate's going to be like a stock, right? So anyway, in any event, so I wish that we had more time to discuss because there's obviously so much that we can cover here. You have so much experience and so much like great wisdom to impart, lots of great expertise in all these vast fields. And we could talk capital raising and mindset and spouses and everything, but we're going to have to get closer to the end of the show. So we're going to enter into the final segment of our show, which is just the rapid round. And it's 5 questions that we ask every one of our guests. And they're meant to be answered in 30 seconds or less. And so maybe I'll have Sophie read the questions.
Yeah. So the first question is, what book has had the biggest impact on you and why?
The biggest impact is going to be How Women Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. It's like the Bible for women. And that's it. Usually, like, I can't even explain it. It's mythopoetic. it's soul. It's like, it gets to the heart of what a woman is. And I think it's a must read for every woman.
I'm ordering that.
Amazing.
Yeah,
that's going on Amazon for sure. Yeah.
And if people wanted to emulate your success, what is the first actionable thing that they could do to follow in your footsteps?
Oh, wow. I would say get really clear on what you want to accomplish, and then take the first logical step to get there. Like if you have a big vision, have the big vision, you'll get there. Maybe not the way you thought you would, but you have to take one definite step in action. Like the universe or God source spirit like wants to see you do something before there's a response to what you decide to do.
I love that. If you can set your vision clear enough, then you have a point in which your brain will start subconsciously attracting things to you. Law of attraction and universal alignment. That's just great.
Yeah, so good. I know. I want to talk more about that.
Yeah.
And what small thing do most people not know about you?
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. I don't even know why this came up, but, and I don't know if you show this on video, but I have 2 different thumbs. I have 2 different looking thumbs.
No way.
Yes, I do.
Oh.
Yes. My mom
so
has
cool.
2 of one and my dad has 2 of the other, but I have 1 of each. So I have 2 different thumbs.
That is so
really
neat.
cool. How does that happen? I'm asking the doctor here how that happens.
I have no idea.
She doesn't know.
Yeah, do you know?
No, I mean, my mom has 2 shaped like this. So I got 1 of hers and I got 1 of my dad's. So
That
that's
is
all I can
so
say.
That is kind of cool. Like,
Wow.
it's like mom, dad.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Next question is, how do you like to unwind and restore your creative juices by yourself?
I like to just sit and do nothing. Like I will sit on my balcony and just talk to the hummingbirds and just be, I have a beautiful view of the state park. And so I'm so blessed to live here. So sometimes like for me now is really like, it's kind of a literal doing nothing. And that's what I need. I need to blank out my mind completely. And that even if it's a 5-minute recharge is really powerful.
Awesome.
Great.
And last question is, what is your favorite family vacation spot?
Oh, wow. We never took vacations as a family when we were little. It's just not something that was in like the budget. So,
Wow.
yeah, we just never did. But my dad would take us to the woods a lot. And so I think and I live in the woods now. And so, and Andrew's like basically like a nature child. And so the woods is always, I don't like to camp, but I like to hike. So the woods, the mountains and hiking.
Very cool. Yep, spoken like a Californian. We're some Californians too, so we know what you mean. All right. Well, thank you so much, AdaPia. This was so great to have you on the show. And again, we could have kept going on for hours talking about all this stuff. But before we go, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about how they can get in touch with you or anything you have going on?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I always say that the easiest way to get a hold of me is to come find me on LinkedIn and DM me on LinkedIn. Like I have my own website, there's alphas, there's all kinds of different places, but to keep it really simple, LinkedIn, not Instagram, sorry. LinkedIn is the best place.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, AdaPia. This was so great to have you on again.
Thank you.
And for all of you listeners who have listened all the way to the end of this podcast, we want to thank you. And please do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, wherever you're listening or watching this. We'd really appreciate that so we can deliver more incredible content like AdaPia has and many of our other guests have to you. And so we want to keep that going as well. And we also want to, we always say this, appease the algorithm gods so that we get more exposure to more individuals on different platforms. And so please do that if you can. We would really appreciate that. So AdaPia, thank you so much again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we're signing off. This is Derek.
And this is Sophie.
We are signing off for the day. Thanks, everyone.